almost every week I'll talk to one of our members who will talk about when they were a kid. They remember going to, they're in their parents' place or maybe visiting their grandparents in one of the suburbs of Chicago or New York or somewhere, and going out at night and being able to look up and see the Milky Way, and now they go back and it's lost. I think the connection to rewilding, anything we can do to protect land and protect water during the day is fantastic, and we also have to think about how we move to protect it at night. It's not enough to protect places just during the day.
You're listening to the Rewilding Earth podcast. Sea turtles, fireflies, butterflies, tree frogs, Atlantic salmon, and migratory birds are all affected horribly by light pollution. No rewilding effort can be complete without addressing light pollution when it's present, and it is present in most places across North America. My guest today is Ruskin Hartley, the CEO and Executive Director of DarkSky. Ruskin champions equitable access to dark skies and quality lighting for all through DarkSky's award-winning programs. He works closely with volunteer leaders and donors to secure increased support for the organization's priorities around the world. Ruskin believes that experiencing a dark sky and appreciating quality lighting are essential to DarkSky's mission.
Dark skies were ubiquitous for 4.54 billion years. One of the few constants that in the life of our planet has been that constant cycle of dark nights and bright days. And really that only started to change probably about 150 years ago with the invention of the electric light bulb, which literally is the symbol of progress these days. And what started as a few points of light has quickly spread to become ubiquitous around the world. And we're in a point now that dark skies that were once the most common experience for everyone has become one of the rarest experiences for many people around the world today.
Yeah, it really is a much more serious issue than I think a lot of people, average folks, really give it credit for.
Yeah, and I think the enemy for dark skies is light pollution. And I think if people have heard about light pollution, they might think about, oh yeah, that means we can't see the stars. But if we go camping, we can get out far enough and we can lie out and we can see the stars again. But more and more of the research and studies over the last 20 years or so is really stacking up in terms of the impact that light pollution is really having on every living thing on the planet. Today, we estimate that light pollution affects 83% of people around the world, 99% of people here in Europe and North America. And from a Globe at Night study that was published in Science last year in 2023, we know that it's growing at 10% per year, so that the night sky is brightening at an incredible rate. And it's impacting everything. You mentioned migrating birds. Current estimates are 1 billion birds in the US alone drawn into brightly lit cities. Many collide with buildings and the glass in these cities, and 1 billion birds each year are dying as a result of that. But it's not just the birds or the turtles. We're learning that light pollution is one of the drivers of the insect apocalypse, for instance. Light pollution affects plants, it affects wildlife under the ocean as well. It really is, it needs to be thought about in the same sort of genre as the impact of climate change in terms of having the impact it's having on biodiversity and wildlife on our planet.
We were just looking at an article, I think, with the graphic on it that showed the different kinds of light pollution from just light poles in a city, and whether that light is pointing straight up into the sky or somewhat up into the sky, and then the preferable way would be straight down and nothing. Why do we have to light up the sky? I just don't understand why we're wasting light.
There's a lot to unpack there. So first, our understanding now is, light pollution is really the brightening of the environment when it should be dark, right? We know that when we introduce light into a naturally dark environment, it has tremendous ecological impacts on the environment. So we want to make sure that when we introduce night into the environment to meet our needs, we're doing it in a way that is thoughtful and responsible. And that's where it gets to, okay, how do you do that? And the first thing you do is you don't blast the light into the sky. Generally, for our purposes, human purposes, we need light on the ground. So there are some very simple steps you can take to mitigate the impact of light pollution by pointing light down, dimming the light down, turning it off when it's not needed, choosing warmer color temperatures. All of those interventions ensure that we can have great quality light where we need it, and we greatly mitigate and reduce the impact on the natural world around us. And it tends to save money as well, which is nice.
I remember that you said that you formed in 1985, and I remember having discussions at the Greenpeace office in Washington, D.C. in 1991 about light pollution and dark skies. But I don't feel like a lot of technology, and certainly not enough legislation, has been applied around the world, certainly here in North America, to the problem. I wonder sometimes who's advocating for all of this extra light. It's just really weird.
I think it's really symptomatic of our relationship to light and dark. Now, we love light, we're drawn to light, and we use light at night to extend our activities. And over the last 10, 12 years, there's really been a transition in lighting technology from old incandescent sources that were very power hungry to new modern sources that use solid state technology, light emission diodes. And the promise of LEDs was that they were going to be incredibly efficient. And in fact, many organizations have advocated for a transition to LED technology. What has happened as light has become cheaper, surprise, we've used more of it. We've taken the savings that could have been achieved, and we've taken those savings and we've chosen to light up more of the earth. We maybe in the old days we could have afforded one light pole, and now we put 2 or 3 in, and we increase the light levels because it makes us feel safer. And we believe that this has led, some of the characteristics of the LED light itself in terms of the color of the light has led to a brightening of the night sky. Now, the flip side of that, there are some incredible aspects of LED technology that means when they are used, you can have very good outcomes, right? So in the city of Tucson, where DarkSky is based, we worked with the city here on a streetlight retrofit. And by changing out the old high-pressure sodium lights that were spewing some of that light up into the sky for new efficient LED technology that will point it down and control the light and reduce the light levels and dim them later in the evening when fewer people are around, they're actually able to save several $1 million per year. And scientists were able to measure a reduction in light pollution at a distance of 8%. So it shows us that we can do it, but we have to be intentional about it. If we lack that intention, then we see so many instances where adding more light simply and changing out light simply leads to an increase in light pollution. And I really think it's that lack of awareness and lack of understanding that's led to the brightening of the night sky over the last, for many decades.
Have there been any attempts at federal legislation so that it isn't just a Tucson here and there that would make it mandatory to do what Tucson has done all over the country?
Yeah, I think light at night is not recognized as an environmental pollution. We believe that needs to change. I think there's a clear body of evidence that it is a source of pollution, just as the same way that particles in air are, or lead in drinking water are considered pollutants. There is no Clean Night Sky Act. Lighting decisions tend to happen locally. Various states and municipalities have enacted various lighting policies over the last probably 40 or 50 years since the first steps were taken in Flagstaff, Arizona, to control light pollution. And some of the cities that have taken it and have been able to mitigate the growth of light pollution, Flagstaff, Tucson, others are great examples. But again, because there's lack of awareness, because light at night is not considered a pollutant, there's generally been a lack of consistent progress. I think there's a growing awareness that it is an issue. I think that extends in to the lighting community. Certainly our discussions with the standard setting bodies and even some of the manufacturers, they recognize that there is a growing issue here and that there are solutions and that there are simple solutions that could be put in place. But the reality is that so many lighting decisions are being made by people who have no background in lighting. It is so easy to go to your local big box retailer and buy a very bright wall pack and slap it on the back of your house and not think about it, not think about turning it off when you go to bed, not think about the impact it's having on the local environment. And really it's that we're dealing with the cumulative impact of all those tiny micro decisions Yeah, and ultimately, yeah, we need national regulation, legislation on this. We need state level legislation. We need county municipal level controls on this in place as well.
I'm just thinking about the PR, the awareness part of it. When there's so many people talking about so many things that need to be done, conservation wise, wildlife wise, habitat wise, whether you're talking about oceans or land or freshwater systems, watersheds, there's so many of us trying to bring awareness to these issues. How do you find it with the work that you've been doing in terms of people's willingness to lean in and listen and maybe volunteer, become an ambassador, come to meetings? I imagine you're finding it the way the rest of us are. It's a very noisy environment and very hard to stand out.
Yeah, clearly there's a lot of issues that the world at large are facing. We're fortunate that we have a very loyal cadre of volunteers, in fact, around the world, who are working on this issue, securing protections locally. We're probably best known for our International Dark Sky Places program, where we have 215 and growing places around the world that have put quality lighting policies in place, providing access to the world at night. These dark sky places are really wonderful examples of what can be done. I think the challenge is, and I believe in how can we cut through some of this noise. Many of the issues that the conservation community are facing are extremely challenging, right? We are failing to get a grip on how to reduce the impact of carbon emissions into the atmosphere. We have no idea how to really remove plastics from the ocean, or to restore an old growth forest, or restore a watershed. But there are really simple solutions that can be put in place to remove excessive light at night. It doesn't mean turning off all the lights all the time. So the solutions are in place. The results are immediate, and the benefits start to flow in short order. So I think that these are really, there are no regret solutions that anyone can put in place and should be part of any city sustainability strategy or any conservation groups initiatives. If you care about protection of wildlife and biodiversity, if you care about energy waste and loss, you should care about pursuing no regret light pollution solutions.
You're listening to the Rewilding Earth podcast. Did you know we also publish insightful and inspirational content from leading rewilding scholars, poets, artists, and organizers from around the world? You can visit rewilding.org and sign up for our weekly digest to receive brilliant, fresh insights on everything rewilding. You'll find over a decade of articles and news from the front lines of wildlands protection and all kinds of restoration efforts. Check us out at rewilding.org, and don't forget to share it with friends. In a world of really hard to solve problems, then you can offer someone a stopgap to be able to do something today, right now, and help with simple solutions that while we're waiting on the great big things. Because I feel like the people who are interested in conservation and environmental issues, they see a field of practically unsolvable problems, or unsolvable in a length of time that would be satisfactory to any of us to have to worry about these things for the shortest time possible. But your set of solutions is very simple and quick, like you said. That must be the hook, right?
Yeah, and I think that there's broad agreements. A number of years ago, we aligned actually with some of the leading groups in the lighting industry around our 5 principles for responsible outdoor light at night. So there's broad agreement around what the solution should be, and that these solutions, when implemented, do not compromise safety or the perception of security. And what they do mean that you eliminate bad light, you eliminate the light that's blasting in the sky, you eliminate the glary wall pack that's shining into your neighbor's yard or into their bedrooms at night. So that's what we're eliminating. And by taking those steps at an individual scale and a community scale, and ultimately at a regional scale, that's what it's going to take to both reduce the impact of light pollution coming from our cities and also protect the naturally dark places that remain, particularly out here in the West.
Are there things that we can do other than having motion activated lights instead of just lights that stay on? What are some of those things that people can do right now today?
Yeah, some of the simplest things you can do, and actually go back to my childhood, where we used to draw the curtains at night and could turn the lights off when we left the room. There are literally simple things you can start doing this very minute that will have an impact. And then as you start to scale those up, it's really about thinking about how you're using light around your house. Yeah, put it on a motion control if you can. If you can't, just make sure you turn it off when you go to bed. If you get an opportunity to replace your fixture, make sure you're buying one that is well shielded. You can go into your stores and you can find DarkSky approved lighting fixtures, for instance. They will tend to be warmer in color and they'll be shielded so that the light will be pointing down. It's those simple steps you can take as a homeowner to reclaim some of the night around your garden and around your home, and actually be a good neighbor, not be blasting light into your neighbor's yard and garden and annoying them.
I've had some folks finding common ground and working with city planners and engineers in more and more places on things like rain gardens. And I wonder how often your paths cross with people who are doing that kind of work. You're all going probably to the same meetings if you're an ambassador. Do you see inroads being made in that part where another thing like Tucson could take off if only there was a really good, strong coalition, an ambassador, whatever, in the right meetings in front of the right people?
Yeah, and I think we're seeing that change. I think dark skies used to be pigeonholed just as an issue of concern to the astronomical community, and through the work of our volunteer ambassador, delegates and advocates around the world, they're making those bridges into the local Audubon societies, into the native plant societies, into the work of the Master Naturalist program. So we're starting to get the message out there that light at night, light pollution is an issue that affects those other things that people care about, be they birds or natural gardens or just safe, welcoming communities for people to live in. This is an issue that cuts across the political spectrum. We find as much support in conservative parts of the country as we do in liberal parts of the country. People are united around their desire to protect the night sky overhead, both for its natural values, but also its cultural heritage values are really important and special and provide that sense of connection to people. And it really is, people feel like it's part of the community that they want to ensure is protected.
Can you draw a picture of what could be expected if someone were to successfully get their city to do something like what Tucson has?
The work in Tucson was really led by the Public Works Department, and their recognition that one of the things that Tucson really cares about is protecting the night sky for the great observatories around here. So really that was the motivating force behind that. And I think most people in the city didn't really notice that the lights had been changed out, and they don't notice the change that's happened, which is a great thing. Right? We didn't want people to suddenly sit up and say, oh, the streets have gone dark or anything like that. So there hasn't been a notice. I think each community comes to it differently. Some of the incentives that are offered as our Dark Sky Places program recognizes dark sky communities, and we have a growing number of communities around the world who are passing quality lighting policies or putting in place quality lighting projects, providing those educational venues and forums, and are people really proud of becoming an internationally a community that's recognized by Dark Sky International as an international dark sky community. But all of these efforts, it's really a process. It's really a process of neighbor talking to neighbor, talking with their city councils, their elected officials about what this will mean, what it will mean for the community, and how it supports the values and the things that these communities care about. Again, be that bird migration, or in Florida, the communities around the turtle nesting beaches. They take great pride that the turtles come back every year, and they want to ensure that that is something that their kids and their grandkids get to experience, and they can help do that by focusing on working on quality lighting.
Do urban environments, as I suspect they do, pull just because they're so much bigger and so much brighter? Do they have an outsized effect on, say, times of bird migration? And even if it's really offset in rural areas around, or the suburbs around a large city that has yet to adopt any dark sky initiatives, is it fair to say that the cities, the urban centers, are really the Goliath in this story where the biggest change needs to happen? Or am I off?
I think it's partly correct. Certainly the large cities and particularly the skylines of the cities are where a lot of the focus of particularly the bird collisions and the bird migration efforts have come. And people probably familiar with the lights out programs, which are fantastic, but realistically turning off the lights in a few of the tall skyscrapers in downtown Chicago or Houston or New York still doesn't really address the bigger issue, which is that the massive sprawl here and the light emanating from these cities and communities can be seen for hundreds of miles in many instances. And it's that sky glow and that light dome that's drawing birds and insects in and drawing them off their migratory path. What's really needed is a regional approach. And while, yeah, the cities are brighter, in some ways, the cities are using light on a per capita basis much more efficiently than the suburban sprawl. We believe a lot of the growth in light pollution, certainly from studies in the UK, where we have advocates as well, has happened in the rural areas. That's where we're seeing the growth in light pollution. That's where we're losing the stars. That almost every week I'll talk to one of our members who will talk about when they were a kid. They remember going to, they're in their parents' place or maybe visiting their grandparents in one of the suburbs of Chicago or New York or somewhere and going out at night and being able to look up and see the Milky Way. And now they go back and it's lost. I think
well, I'm glad I asked that question.
Not just an issue of large cities, it's really an issue of suburban sprawl. So I think the connection to rewilding, anything we can do to protect land and protect water during the day is fantastic. And we also have to think about how we move to protect it at night. It's not enough to protect places just during the day.
I remember very recently seeing it's always popular to depict Earth from space and the night sky. You used to be able to see spokes of light coming out of a very intense spot, which would be Seattle or Washington, D.C. I don't see a lot of pictures like that anymore. They're not that crisp. They seem like what you're talking about. A lot more light is happening in rural and suburban areas and muddying up your ability to say, where exactly is the city limit in these places when you're just looking at the night sky from above?
Yeah, the footprint of our cities now extends dozens, if not 100 kilometers in many instances. The sky glow and the light dome from Las Vegas can be seen from the middle of Death Valley and parts of Grand Canyon at great distance. And certainly when you look at the maps that have been created of the footprint of sky glow, the New World Atlas from Fabio Felci and others, for instance, certainly here in the US, the eastern part of the US is essentially lost. The natural night sky has been lost with a few exceptions, lots of northern Maine and a little bit of maybe West Virginia and Appalachia. But when you get to the western part of the state, there are reservoirs of natural darkness that are left. The Colorado Plateau, parts of up in eastern Oregon and Washington, but they're being nibbled away by the light and the sprawl coming around our cities and highways. So these large intact blocks of landscape, yes, they're being broken up by roads, but they're also being broken up by light pollution, which is a serious problem for many migrating species, be they flying or land-based.
I'm sure you've seen them if they exist. I was just thinking, all the maps that we've ever produced have been in the daytime. Like the way that we color our maps, even if it's completely artificial and it's not using any satellite imagery at all, the way we depict maps is in the daytime.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to think about the wildlands network designs that have been done, the Sky Island and the East Coast, the spine of the continent. What if each one of those projects had a set of maps that were just night so that we could maybe start doing some sort of measurement of success based on, if we've really wilded this place and we're intentional about including light pollution in that equation, then we should be seeing consistently darker spots on the map where we have claimed to have done rewilding or a connection between two core areas. How recovered or rewild is that really if it's still got light problems?
Yeah. I think it's very common, certainly in the broader conservation community, to really focus on daytime indicators, right? Many of us tend not to be as active at night. So it's natural that we gravitate to what's happening in the day. I have worked on a number of large-scale conservation assessments. I've talked in the past, and I've talked to some people who've been working on them more recently. I've yet to come across one that has actually intentionally integrated light at night as one of their analytical overlays, right? Can you really have a large-scale conservation network of cores and corridors and protected habitat without considering what's happening at nighttime. We know this works at very, very different scales. There's been studies done in Los Angeles, for instance, where mountain lions are active in the city, and it's very clear that they're avoiding the brightly lit corridors. So we need to extend our conception of what protection means, our concept of what protection means from the day into the night, and really have a holistic 24-hour view of conservation.
The way that we depict where things are at night on a map, if you see it on a map, is by using the light to indicate things on the map, which makes it really difficult. I was just tripping out on the mapping, how those guys would actually do the GIS.
Yeah, they need to be considering the light points, because the light points will tend to be avoided by animals, or there'll be a habitat sink. So those are the places that need to be integrated into the analysis. And if you're looking at conservation corridors and rewilding exercises, part of rewilding should look at how do we reduce the impact of light from these cities and communities that are different? How can we get them to put lighting policies in place? How can we get them to shield their lights and dim them down so that the footprint of light from that community is having a greatly reduced impact on this habitat corridor that previously we've only thought about from looking at daytime indicators.
Ruskin, what would you say would be your first recommendation for someone who's hearing you today and wanting to do something and hearing that there's some easy things we could do to make an actual impact? Where would you point them first?
Yeah, go to DarkSky.org. It's got incredible resources that have been built up over time. You can sign up to get our newsletter so that you can understand the latest. And this is really a volunteer-led movement, so there's opportunities to connect with people locally through our advocacy network. If you want to get active in your community, you'll find other people working on these issues locally. It's a very welcome community, great group, lots to learn from. And as you said, there's some simple solutions that could be put in place in short order so that we can start to make progress.
The folks that love to use eBird and all of the Cornell apps to help with the yearly migration studies, that's an entirely volunteer, almost entirely, effort all over the world to just count birds and report them. And I wonder if you have thought about that network. When the sun goes down, no more birds, but maybe a lot more energy for mapping things like studying light pollution and reporting back, as I see as one of the possibilities here for getting involved.
Yeah, there's a great community science project called Globe at Night that we're a collaborator on. We're out of here at the National Optical Infrared Laboratory here and Radio Observatory here in Tucson. Our lab is the lead on that, and anyone with a phone can go out at certain times during the month, basically when there's a new moon, and you essentially go out, and if it's clear, you look up at the sky and you look at a particular constellation and you estimate the number of stars in the constellation. Essentially, the more stars, the better the night sky quality, and the fewer stars, the more light polluted it is. Those studies get submitted, and it's actually those data points from the Globe at Night study that were published in a science magazine, a science article last year, that indicated that light pollution has grown globally at 10% per year. So you have an opportunity to contribute directly to these global projects and these peer-reviewed studies that are so critical to our understanding of what's going on.
So you're offering people a way to quickly and easily get something done. And I think a lot of people have a strong appetite for that now, like I said earlier, because so many of the other problems are so big and they're going to take a lot longer to solve. But this is like action right now. So I would encourage everyone listening, get to darksky.org, click on Get Involved, get on their list, and stay up to date. And Ruskin, thank you so much for giving us your time today. I really appreciate it, and I would love to have you back.
Great, thanks for covering it. Happy to come back anytime.
Thanks for listening to the Rewilding Earth podcast. We do what we do because of you. This podcast is supported by listeners like you who long to live in a wilder world. Please consider donating at rewilding.org and subscribe to our weekly news and article digest while you're there. To go the extra mile, you can follow and share Rewilding Earth on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Bonus points for sharing this podcast with your friends. To listen to past episodes, go to rewilding.org/pod. That's rewilding.org/pod.